The Help Show is a podcast dedicated to connecting individuals to mental health resources in the community. The Help Show is more than a podcast. It is a movement focused on change. Our objectives are to change the perception and stigma associated with mental health, encourage those with mental health disease to get help, foster access to mental health resources, and remove barriers to mental health resources, including those encountered in underserved communities. We remain committed to supporting the mental health needs of the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. Though the world has changed dramatically in a short period of time, The Help Show is here to help and navigate through the changes and address your mental health needs. Seek help when needed. If distress impacts your daily life for several days or weeks, talk to a clergy member, counselor, or doctor, or contact SAMHSA Helpline at 1-800-985-5990. The crisis worker will work to ensure that you feel safe and help identify options and information about mental health services in your area. Your call is confidential and free. This podcast is sponsored by Good Co-working. Good Co-working is the first solar-powered co-working community in the world focused on cultivating profitable businesses that do right by the people plus the planet, all while keeping you safe in a beautiful plant-filled wellness center space. Get an address for your business, which comes with 2 daytime co-working days per month to get your meetings done, all for the quarterly cost of $150. Good Work have many membership options, from frequent flyer to office rental, so let Good Co-working help you find just the right space to help you balance your life and work. Located in Dallas, Texas, just south of Deep Ellum. Check out goodcoworking.co and tell them The Help Show sent you. Today's special guest is Von Eaglin. Von Eaglin is a licensed professional counselor, supervisor with a group practice in North Dallas. He is certified couple relationship trainer and sees a wide range of clients addressing couples, family systems, men issues, anger management, abuse, and addiction, just to name a few. He is a doctoral candidate at the University of North Texas in the Counseling and Higher Education Department and an adjunct facility member at SMU. He's also a recurring guest expert on the nationally syndicated One Life radio program. His PhD research focuses on couple relationships, dynamics. Von is a native of Beaumont, Texas, and has lived in the DFW area since 2000. He's been married for 16 years and has a 1-year-old son. You can find him on www.vontalkstherapy or on Instagram at Von Talks. Let's get it going. I'm so excited to have you again. Quick little did you know, when we first started the Health Show, Von was a guest, and I kind of bombarded him, because I'm good for that, I bombard people. But it was the best thing I've ever bombarded a person, because he was extremely kind and knowledgeable then, and he's still kind and knowledgeable now. And I just want to say thank you so much for being my guest again.
Thank you for having me, I appreciate it.
So, let's start with this conversation. So, fatherhood, what does that mean to you, Von?
Fatherhood is probably the highest honor that I could ever have as a man. It's an opportunity where I could, give whatever I've learned in life to my son. I do have a son, and as a teacher, a mentor, someone who's going to support him, helping him grow as a great member of society. Watching him learn and discover things about himself, things about life, helping him grow his emotional intelligence. I mean, it's just a wonderful experience. Yes, there are some trials and tribulations, because, fatherhood just, that kind of comes with the territory. But I would say good fathers, have a great grand opportunity to make a strong investment in their sons, or in the daughters as well. So
okay. And so, how did your upbringing affect your perspective in mental health and in the way you're gonna, raise your son?
Well, honestly, I didn't know that I was going to be here, to be honest. So it was a kind of a fluke, to be honest with you, because my undergrad was in business finance, Now, growing up, I grew up in Beaumont, Texas. Beaumont is, I love my hometown, Big Money, Texas. However, it is not the best environment in terms of where I grew up in. You know, it was a middle class home, but there were low expectations, especially academically, because I went to the hood high school, you know what I mean, and the hood schools and stuff like that. So, whereas I had a strong male father in my home, most of my friends did not. And so my father was able to, you know, invest a lot inside of me, and that taught me, you know, it gave me the idea of, okay, this is what I want to do whenever I become a father. And so the upbringing, the environment, like I said, Beaumont, Texas is usually, actually, Forbes magazine rated it as like the least educated metropolitan city in America. It has usually one of the highest per capita death rates, or murder rates rather, in Texas, and it's usually one of the top 10 fattest cities in America as well. So you know, I mean, so that just gives you a couple of stats about Beaumont. Not that it's all bad, but growing up and then having a father invest in me, that taught me, okay, this is what I need to do, and then I'm just going to take what he gave me and then build upon that. So.
Okay. Okay. I know some people out of Beaumont. My sister is out of Beaumont.
Really? Okay.
And someone I used to talk to out of Beaumont.
Hopefully they went to the good school.
But very successful people.
Really?
So those that I do know been from Beaumont, they work hard to get out of Beaumont.
Exactly.
Not to go back to Beaumont.
Exactly, yeah. So.
But then also to exude and succeed in life.
Yeah.
I know some overachievers from Beaumont, so hey.
It's not all bad.
It's not all bad,
so,
yeah. So, has sports influenced your parenting style? So I know your son is 1 year old. 1 year old. Yeah. But you know, I know you probably have these ambitions and dreams what you're going to teach him. I could just see you now, like here the football, baby. Here the football, little baby.
Yeah. So he's already learning how to throw. So you know.
So how is it going to influence your parenting style? Like how you were raised? Are you gonna? What kind of parent are you going to be? What kind of learning style? What kind of?
So in terms of my sports background, I grew up in an athletic family. So my dad, he was like an all-state athlete. My brother was like the man when it came to sports in school. I was the fat kid though, honestly. And so my uncle played in the NFL. Actually, all of my uncles went to school on athletic scholarships. I have a lot of family that were professional athletes, and you know, and so I'm very familiar with, you know, the sports arena, so to speak. Now my own sports background included everything from football, cross country, track, tennis, swimming, basketball. I mean, I tried to do every single thing. However, as a father, those sports will help. Well, the sports themselves are not the issue. It is more so what they taught me: the discipline, the self-esteem, the responsibility, the teamwork, the community, learning how to help other people whenever they're down, learning how to be a leader, learning how to push yourself when you don't feel like it. So all those late nights when I'm up studying, I can pull upon those same characteristics, because the characteristics that I developed in those sports are the same things that I'm going to be handing down to my son. Whenever he feels down, like what can he do to pick him up? The mental fortitude that's necessary whenever he deals with all the, you know, vicissitudes of life, so to speak. And so it influences me greatly. In fact, I mean, as a guy, I roughhouse a lot with my son, to be honest with you, because young men, they're always kind of testing their mettle against other men, because the thing about manhood is that it's not organic, it's really reactive. So men, you know, what we do is posture ourselves based on the man sitting across from us, and then as I posture myself, he postures himself, and then I reposture, almost kind of like two peacocks doing a dance in a sense. So young men, we look to the older male to set our idea of what masculinity is. And so I know my son's gonna be looking at me to be a good example for him. And so whatever I can do, and then the sports, again, that adds to it. I want him to play sports if he, you know, so chooses. You know, I'm not gonna try to live vicariously through him, you know.
Because the question, are you gonna be like I can't even pronounce it. An authoritarian parent. I can't even pronounce
authoritarian?
it. Authoritarian parent.
So when we talk,
Make sure you cut that out.
so when we talk about parenting styles, there are different parenting styles. I grew up with a more authoritarian style parent, which is, you know, it's very clear in terms of what is right and wrong. You do this, you don't do this. And if you step out of line, you're gonna get a whooping, so on and so forth. So now the thing about that kind of parenting that I see is that kids will, like, whenever they start thinking for themselves, they either become rebellious openly to the parent, or they become really sneaky and kind of do something because, you know, if I get in trouble, I know this is not right, so I'm just going to do this behind your back. And so that is not the model of parenting that is preferred. So you have authoritarian, you have the passive parent, the one that is kind of, I don't want to call them an enabler, but they, you know, kind of laissez-faire, hands off. I want to be your friend. I don't want you to be mad at me. That kind of parent. Then, but the authoritarian style parent, the authoritative style parenting, it's much more collaborative. You know, we're going to work on things together because whenever you become what I call an emotion coach, because with kids, helping them build their emotional intelligence and doing that in a collaborative way is essential, because emotional intelligence and social relationships are the two highest predictive factors of success. And so it's not your IQ, it's not your gender, it's not your sexual orientation, it's not your SES, your socioeconomic status. None of those things matter. Your emotional intelligence is the key factor for helping your child be successful, because emotional intelligence is what helps them develop meaning for themselves, learn how to have boundaries, learn to, you know, have successful relationships. I mean, like, that's the thing that is the most important thing. So if I can give that to my son along with a little bit of grit, you know, a little bit of resilience, I think that's the goal. That's the goal. So,
okay. So as a father, how do you address systematic racism with your family? Because, you know, that's a big topic right now, and it's not getting any better anytime soon. And your son is 1, he'll be 2, then 3, then he'll be 10, then 15. So I'm not trying to push him out the door, but you know, how are you going to be? I know the conversation you probably have with your wife, but what conversation are you going to have with your son?
So some of these conversations I do believe will happen just organically. Like whenever he goes to school and let's say he experiences some microaggression or some covert type of racism, as opposed to being as overt as it used to be in the past. It just depends on what environment that he's in, you know. But, you know, some of these are going to happen whenever he comes home and we talk about how his day was. Then we're going to talk about, hey, what happened? Or how were you treated? How did this person view things? How did you respond to certain things? How did you respond to the authority figure? So on and so forth. So now some of these other conversations, we're gonna, I don't want to say we manufacture them, but we're gonna, you know, there's gonna be, you know, we're gonna have some deep conversations about how to handle himself with police. How do you handle yourself when someone who's of a different race treats you or mistreats you? And number one, we don't want to be the person, like, you know, reverse racism. I don't want you mistreating anyone either. You know? And so so we're going to have a lot of those conversations. I know my dad had a lot of those conversations with me. They were a little bit, my dad's upbringing was, I mean, he grew up, you know, with segregation. And so, you know, the stories that I get, my lived experience is a lot different than my dad's. You know, there's a white boy, you know, killed my dog, and when we got new books, they came, they were the old books from the White House School, and you know, when we played sports, they always gave it to the white guy, even though he couldn't be a good running back. So on and so those experiences are much more ingrained in my father's upbringing than mine. And the story, he told me this. He said, "Look, you're here. The white guy starts off here. Here's the finish line. You better make it there. You better make it there first." And I was like, I'm 9, man. Like, what? So, you know, and so, but those are the kind of conversations that he had with me, because he was, you know, his experience with discrimination was so much more than mine. And so, but whatever experiences I have, because society has changed and it's developing. Yes, we still have a lot of issues, but those conversations are they're gonna look different. And as he grows up and develops, those conversations are gonna develop over time too. Because what he can understand at 5 is gonna be totally different when he, you know, experiences something at 15 years old. So, yeah.
Because, you know, like right now, what's going on in the media with the massacre of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Black Wall Street. And I, you know, only knew so much about it, but then I started doing my research. And, you know, those that are still dealing, because people are still, especially people of color, we're still dealing with that. You have a woman that's 107 years old, and she still feels that pain. Just like the guy, I think he was in the Navy or the Army, he's 100 years old. I can't remember their names at the top of my head. But they have PTSD. And they're gonna have that until the day they die. And you can tell that they always wanted justice, but they didn't know how to ask for justice. And in the Tulsa, Oklahoma, that situation is, I know it's 100 years ago, but people just start talking about it 50 years ago. So when your son, he's 1, and it's 100, so by the time he's like, I'm gonna give him 15. It'll be 115 years old, which is still, it's still like, it's still close, still close to home. And so by then they probably have more research and more people start coming out, and you have grandkids that start coming out. What if your son says, you know, hey Dad, tell me more about the Tulsa, Oklahoma, the massacre situation, or can you explain why is there so much racism? Why? What would be your response? How would you talk to your son?
So, well, I think whenever issues happen now, the issues in the past, to me, become much more relevant because, like when George Floyd, we had all these, rallies and, I mean, literally around the world.
Absolutely.
For
fighting justice for that. Yeah.
And so, all of a sudden, all the injustices of the past said, hold up, you know what, this is still happening because now it's in your face, So I think I'll go back, I believe it was Trevor Noah said this, and he was actually talking about President Trump. He says, he's offensive, but I am not affected by him as much as. So, like you have people who have experiences and their lived experiences are different. Like when you talk about like white privilege or whatever privilege, race or society is, because we're talking about America. So, the Caucasian male is typically the person who's privileged in this society. But if you're talking about India, if you're talking about another country, if you're talking about Mexico, like all of those are different. Yeah. And so, when you talk about what am I gonna, how do we have these kind of conversations, like some of these, I won't say they'll be mandatory, but we're gonna have some frank, open discussions with how some people may view life, like whether they be ignorant or unexposed to different things, or the exposure is key. I will say that. So,
right.
Whenever I plan on exposing my son to a lot of different things. We're going to travel, we're going to see different cultures, exposing him to different languages, because I want him to see that there's a big world outside of your microcosm, just a small bubble that you grew up in, because you need to understand that people think differently than you do and learn. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No problem. So the question I have to ask, because before I forget, so why is it hard for men to address their mental health? Because we're going back to I'm talking about Tulsa, and then we're talking about you teaching your son how to, cope with different issues when he gets older enough to be able to talk about his emotions. So the question, this is like $1 million question, okay? Yeah. This is for you ladies, okay? Why is it hard for men to address their mental health? Especially in sports.
Gotcha.
Because I've noticed that. Like I date, I'm single, okay?
I don't know why.
So I want to know, why is it so hard, especially those that are athletes, to express their emotions?
Gotcha. So men, usually when I have a man come into counseling, usually I say 3 things. Number 1, either some woman in their life has influenced them to come in. Hey, you know what? You have some anger issues or you're depressed. It might be a mother, it might be a sister, it might be a wife, it might be a daughter, and they're actually trying to persuade them to come into counseling. Number 2, they usually come into counseling because they've had experience with it in the past. Hey, you know what? My dad was an alcoholic. I went to Al-Anon. And number 3, usually what I see most often is that this is the Hail Mary. It's the long bomb. I don't have anywhere to turn. Everything's hit the fan, and I'm at my wit's end. So because of that, guys, we are raised and we're socialized into only being able to express certain emotions. Yes, we have a lot of feelings. Our ego is big, but many times much more fragile than a woman's. Again, I'm overgeneralizing. However, but guys, we deal with issues, as you like some of the statistics you read, we suffer in silence. Because we're supposed to have it together, we're supposed to be independent, we're supposed to be resilient, we don't even ask for directions, even if we're lost. And so whenever we have emotions, we have them, and we don't even know how to articulate what emotion that is.
Absolutely.
And so I just know I'm angry. I'm not allowed, society, I'm not allowed to feel sad, to be hurt, if I'm playing sports, let's say I'm playing on the football field and I injure my ankle. I usually can't go up to my coach crying, Coach, I'm sad, my ankle's hurt, because, the coach is gonna say, suck it up, get back in the game, or go to the trainer. Because the thing about it is that guys, our whole goal typically is to keep the game going.
Absolutely.
So, can I go into a little bit of research?
Come on.
Okay. So
I'm ready.
If you have, let's say you have 7, 8, 9-year-old boys and they're playing. They usually play over a large geographical area. So let's say we have a little time, he starts crying. His crying is an interruption to the game. Then let's say they're playing it or tag. If he cries too much and makes too much commotion, then, let's say the leader of the group, call him Chris. Chris comes, hey, Tommy, why are you crying? I never get the ball. Hey, everybody, Tommy has the ball. Okay, you're good? Off and running. They go playing again. Because his emotions are a disruption to the game. Now, if you take 2 little girls, let's say they're playing house, Sally and Susie or whatever, and then Sally says, hey, I started crying, and hey, why are you crying? Hey, you don't wear the beret that I want you to wear. Now all of a sudden the game stops. They now focus in on the emotional connection between them. Hey, hey, I'm gonna wear what you want me to wear tomorrow. Hey, can we have a sleepover? Hey, we're gonna marry, brothers so we can live on the same street and live near each other. And all of a sudden, the game goes to the side. So you see that, when you just kind of project that out in life, you see that happen in relationships. A woman comes to me, you have an issue, all of a sudden I want to solve it. because I want to keep the game going. Let's have fun. Let's have sex. Let's have peace. Keep the game going. So, and so, so guys, a lot of times, our goal is to, we become what's called emotionally dismissive. Okay, and when we're emotionally dismissive, it means that we don't notice low intensity emotion in ourselves or in other people. We don't take time for introspection to think about, like, okay, how does this emotion, where did this come from? How does it affect me? You know, what is it telling me? We want to problem solve. We want rationality to kind of, deal with, emotions. We're upset when people get too, angry or when emotions get too high. Hey, you're not talking logically. You know what I mean? You're acting like a child. What's wrong with you? So we want that a lot of times.
Sound like my relationship. I can't take this.
So that's what happens. So guys, we don't learn how to value feelings the way we should. And then our depth of feeling and then being allowed to experience those things is something that we just don't always do. And sometimes we have to be taught how to do that. It's okay to have feelings. I teach my kids this. Anytime I'm doing a workshop, I'm teaching parents. If I'm talking to a school, whoever it is, all your feelings are acceptable. All your behaviors are not, but all your feelings are.
So is this why they become emotional, and I say emotionally incompetent, and I say emotionally unavailable. Those are my two words. Like, there's so many men out here, I'm like men in general, that are so emotional unavailable. Like they just, it's like emotion, cut. Like
So, I would say this, that is, when you say emotionally available, whenever you don't know, you just don't know that you don't know sometimes. And so, let's say my emotions, if we have a pendulum, I'm swinging between 1 and 10, I function between a 6 and a 4.
Okay.
Yours is, 1 to 10, and, and whenever you hit 1, I'm just like, that's too much for me. You're giving me you're extra, you know what I mean? And so, when we're emotionally available, again, we're not comfortable. Again, I'm overgeneralizing. We're not comfortable.
I say emotion unavailable, not available.
Yeah, emotionally unavailable.
Unavailable.
Well, certain emotions we're not comfortable with. Feeling weak, feeling vulnerable. Most men hate feeling weak and feeling vulnerable. So we're gonna, anything that makes me feel like that, I'm gonna I'm gonna just cast. I don't want to deal with that. So crying, being sad, feeling hurt, feeling powerless, feeling misunderstood, feeling confused, feeling betrayed, those are things that we usually don't deal with. What I do deal with is anger and frustration and and irritation, and like those things are acceptable. So those are typically what we go towards. So
quick question. So when you are counseling men, okay, what emotion do you hear the most?
Anger. And so now here's the thing about emotions.
Okay.
When people experience emotions, you can't experience one pure emotion at a time. Okay. So you experience a variety of emotions all at the same time. And so anger is a mixed emotion. A lot of counselors call it a secondary emotion. So anger usually relates to not getting what you want. Like, no one gets angry whenever they get what they want.
That's true.
And so whenever you get angry, there's a payoff associated with it.
Okay.
For instance, I want you to understand me. If you don't do that, I get angry. I want you to give me something, so I get angry. I want you to get away from me, I get angry. And so anger and frustration, again, that's acceptable.
Oh my God. Man, hungry, I'm angry.
Hangry, there you go. So, but again, anger, a lot of times guys will get angry. Some guys are more in touch with their emotions. In my relationship, I'm the emotional one. My wife is like, why are we watching this drama? Can we stop? And like, I'm crying, like, you don't understand. Did you see what happened here? And she's like, I can't deal with that right now. But again, every relationship, again, is different. But by and large, most guys, again, we don't deal with those feelings that feel really negative or that are too powerful, because that's just a really uncomfortable place for us to be in. It's almost like, I say this a lot of times with adolescents. It's like, we go here for the session, we start here swimming, we go deep sea diving for a second, and then we got to come up for air. You ladies, you're like scuba divers, professional. You're seeing the bottom of the floor. You can deal with that for a long time, and you're dealing with all these strong and emotional feelings, talking to your girlfriends and so on, and connecting with other people. I got to come up for air though. I can only do so much, kind of deal.
So how do you help other men express their emotions?
And so, one, you have to normalize it. Emotions aren't bad.
No.
And so because here's the thing with many emotions, that there's a paradox to it, especially like when I talk about grief. Like, when it's unexpressed and you just like leave it there, it's gonna manifest some kind of way.
Right.
And so being able to say, it's okay to have this feeling, again, all your feelings are acceptable, all your behaviors are not. Let's say my son, it's okay for you to be angry. It's not okay for you to go punch a hole in the wall or go choke your little cousin or spit on somebody.
Yeah.
But it's okay to be angry. Okay, and so, but letting them know that all these feelings are acceptable, and then learning how to have good coping mechanisms to deal with those feelings is really important, because you don't want to have negative or unhealthy coping mechanisms. Because I'll give you an example. When guys come in my office, let's say they're depressed, then the depression is really, what guys tend to do is what we call externalize the depression.
Okay.
We don't necessarily sit with it. I may see a guy engage in like promiscuity, substance abuse. You'll see a lot more anger and irritation. You'll see them become a workaholic. You'll see them do things to go off into a fantasy, some kind of pleasurable activity.
Okay.
You know, I see the guy, he's going in, he's cheating on his wife, but that's not the issue. The issue is actually depression. That's the root of it.
Yeah.
And the manifestation is like, I'm just looking for something that's gonna make me feel good.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if we deal with the depression, we deal with the issue, then the symptom or whatever I'm seeing clears up by itself.
Okay.
So it's really important that we actually deal with the issue. And many times guys are depressed, but again, we suffer in silence. You see, we have higher suicide rates simply because we use more lethal means than women do. Women are more likely to take pills or go try to hang themselves, and guys like, just give me a gun.
Yeah,
you know,
that is true. That's very true.
So again, we suffer in silence. We deal with the issues, and again, we don't know how to express them, and so they're just left unexpressed, and then we deal with it in some way that may be unhealthy.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to get back into, I want to focus on the sports. Okay. So how does masculinity in sports affect relationships personally and professionally?
So, well, it's a big question.
Yes.
So some of that depends on your sport that you're playing.
So, okay, let's go to football.
Okay, football. So football is a hyper-masculine sport.
Okay.
You know, I've counseled, you know, NFL players. I have friends that are in the NFL.
Right.
You know, like I said, I've had family members that are in the NFL. I've counseled, college athletes that play football. Had a lot of friends. I played college football for a bit, and so. But it's a hyper-masculine sport, meaning that you tend to see, when we talk about the spectrum, you know, and like most spectrums are kind of like a bell curve, it's more on the end in terms of like hyper-masculinity. So again, that's going to affect how you see things. The kid, I'll say it like this, whenever you're raised, guys were socialized into what masculinity is.
Okay.
Most guys tend to see three things in terms of masculinity. Number one, the kid who is an athlete usually is the most popular in school. So athleticism is highly prized. That's the one the girls want. Doesn't matter how he looks, he's the best athlete. That's the star, you know what I'm saying, in the school or at the, you know, on the field, so on and so forth. The second one typically is economic success. You know, the guy who has the most toys and looks the best. Again, you're looked at as like you're a bigger man or an alpha male. And then usually the third thing is sexual conquest. You know, but specifically about sports and football, because it's such a hyper-masculine environment, then those guys definitely aren't allowed to express their emotions as much. Now, the coach does set the tone. You know, some coaches have more of a family-oriented environment. Other coaches are more about business. So, like where you're at in terms of like your sporting, I guess, endeavors. If you're in Pee Wee League football, that looks different. If you're in high school football, college football is definitely a business. You know, I'm trying to recruit someone who's better than you the next year.
Absolutely.
When I played college ball, I mean, we went to a club one night, and several people went to jail that night. The coach only bailed out the star athletes.
I'm taking a look.
The coach only bailed out the star athlete. Everybody else stayed in jail. The backup quarterback, the backup tailback, the backup But the star athlete ended up playing for Green Bay for 10 years. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, wow.
And so he was that good, though. You know what I mean? He was like all conference, so on and so forth. Right. So, I mean, it's a business. And then when you get to, you know, the professional level, and less than 1% of people actually make it to the professional level. But when you get there, I mean, that is definitely a business. You know, if you are, let's say I have a friend of mine. He's married, and he has 3 kids, and like whenever he gets traded to another team, well, they have to buy a new house in that city. I mean, you know, they have to, you know, uproot things. They have to, you know, where are the kids going to go to school? Like, it's a very different type of experience that you have whenever you're a professional athlete.
Right.
But centering on how football and some of these sports affect masculinity, yes, you can. It can be toxic at times, but you can also learn a lot of good things in sports too.
Absolutely.
You know, so in terms of like some of the things I said before, discipline, responsibility, teamwork, consistency, and doing things that you don't enjoy but acting like you love it, and you know, but the discipline of, you know, your diet, food, I mean, all this kind of stuff. So it's a very different experience that you have as an athlete. So
does the tight-knit culture of a team leave room for men to address their mental health?
Again, some of that's dependent upon the team. You know? Some teams, and then the stigma of mental health is becoming is decreasing, it's reducing. When you have like I've been seeing like I Am an Athlete, so you see Brandon Marshall.
Yes, I love them.
And so
I love
and
them.
you watch Chad Ochocinco,
yes.
and you see them talking about things. I think they had Deion Sanders come on. They said, "Hey, what was your lowest point?" He said, "I was suicidal." And it was like, really? Like I was on every commercial, I was doing this, but all those people wanted something from me and no one actually knew me. And the only people I felt like actually loved me were my kids. And so it doesn't matter, you know, the money, the acquisition, all the women and everything like that. If you're at that level, like you can still deal with a lot of mental health issues.
Absolutely.
And so, but so the stigma's coming down, and getting back to your question, I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Does a tight-knit culture of a team leave room for men to address their mental health?
For some men, no, you know, because I have to, you know, it depends on what kind of man it is and how he's raised and, you know, and what he sees as normal. But many times men don't address it because to do so would be seen as weak or vulnerable, and we don't want that coming into the locker room. So.
Absolutely. And so does race matter when it comes to mental health? And I kind of want to talk about generational trauma and celebrating Juneteenth and kind of put that all in one sentence.
So I would say race does come into play. I think it looks a little bit different. So I was counseling a college athlete, and he experienced some racism from the administration.
Okay.
Because he confronted the administration saying that, hey, you know what? The only reason you have us here is because you want to make money.
Absolutely.
And
they didn't take too light to that.
No, they did not. You know what I mean? So that's why they probably sent him to me. You know what I mean? So you know.
Vaughn, help him.
So, but again, you know, I mean, that's always going to be a component inside of it. Just like you have like NBA athletes saying that you see people like spitting on them, throwing popcorn on them, spilling drinks on them, and they're saying that this is pent up energy because of the coronavirus. But at the same time, this is just disrespectful because you see them. It's an entertainment. Yeah. You know, that's really what it is. This is a business, and you're entertaining me with your athletic prowessness. So, it's important that people start to address these issues, and that you have people who have a voice come forward and say something. If you see if you see something being done wrong, then you do something about it. So. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you answered. You did. I was going to ask you a question, but you pretty much answered it. I think about the Deion Sanders when I was like, does having a spotlight on an athlete affect them mentally? Which can. You have all this. You have all these expectations. You have everybody wanting something, which is true. But the question after an athlete is like, you know what? This is too much. What do you do? What are resources available for those that are professional, not professional? Because, I don't want to say only for the elite. Just because you don't make it NFL, NBA, NBA, I mean, baseball, it doesn't make you less than. And so what resources are available for athletes that play? Because there is a difference. Like when you don't play, I ran track, 300 hurdles, okay?
Oh, that's a race right there.
And I wasn't great. Okay, I liked it because the booty shorts, but I have this competitive side in me, and when you're an athlete, when you're elite, that's like times 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and those that don't like play sports or like do yoga, I just think it's different than those that like are competitive. Right. So I'm not saying that I kind of am saying that they kind of should have different counselors. Yeah. Because it's different.
It is, and so the mentality is different. The discipline is different. It is a difference. You know, my wife, I guess you could say her career was an athlete because she danced professionally for 10 years. So she was in the body business. You know, you're worried about, how much do I weigh? How am I going to look in this? Because I'm scantily clad. Like, how do I perform this? Do I have the proper flexibility? Like the discipline of an athlete is very different. Whenever you are at that level. Right. So when we talk about resources, though, some of these resources are literally just Googling it. So the best resource I usually tell people to do is like just go to Psychology Today. Okay. Most counselors advertise on Psychology Today. You can find one in your area, even by zip code. Okay. You can look up whether they take insurance, whether they do sliding scale. You can look up whether they take EAP programs, different things of that nature. And then you can look at like websites like Mental Health First Aid. It has a whole list of resources.
I didn't even know that mental health first aid.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Substance abuse, SAM. HSA, which is like if you have substance abuse issues, NAMI, which is like the National Alliance of Mental Health, so, and then there's like BetterHelp. They got, there's resources coming out online, know, with people being able to get mental health just on their phone. And so, and even apps that you can use, such as Uper or, Headspace if you're looking for something for mindfulness. But a lot of times it's just a click away. If you just simply Google and just do, a 10-minute search, 5-minute search, you can find someone. But you want to vet that person. Just like anytime you are meeting with a counselor, you want to, because the therapeutic relationship is one of the things that create change.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I have people come to me because I have an athletic background.
Right.
And so, hey, you know what my son is going through, or you have experience with being an athlete. Even though Father Time is kind of taking over. I'm over 40 years old now, so.
Hey, yeah. I'm over 40.
You see, nobody knew that until you said it, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, so, but having that experience, I can identify and relate to people who are going through that, so,
Okay, and how can we make getting help less a stigma for athletes?
Some of that, again, is like normalizing it. I like the I am an athlete. You see people like...
I love them.
Yeah, so
I
you
do.
see, I mean, Dak Prescott talked about, mental health whenever his brother died. Kevin Love came. I mean, you see, professional athletes coming out and talking about this, and that does help reduce the stigma, because it's like, you know what? This guy is at the pinnacle of what I would consider to be an alpha male, and he's saying, hey, it's okay to go talk with somebody.
Absolutely.
And so I was watching a special about Mike Tyson. I don't know if you've seen that.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, well, it just came on. I think they just aired part 2.
Okay.
But on one of the segments, it was this older white lady. She was like, and it was Mike Tyson's like mental health counselor, and she was talking about all the trauma that Mike grew up with and how he was bullied and so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, he was, what you would consider the pinnacle of what it means to be a man at one time in the world. More famous than the Pope, more famous than Michael Jackson. I mean, in the 90s, it was Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So so I grew up in a good era. So that's what I'm saying.
So we're getting ready to close out. I think this is an amazing interview. I want to let you guys know about the our next podcast would be July 30th. So make sure that you listen to us. Right now, this podcast is June the 30th, which is on a Wednesday at 6:30 Central Time. So please, guys, tune in. This is so great. Von Eaglin, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you. Thank you. This is the second time, so it has to be 3. My number is 3. So you'll be back.
Yeah.
We might try to get him to be a guest, be a co-host for next year.
So let me know.
Okay, but thank you. Thank you, Von. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank all our partners: Auckland Research Associates, NJI Holding, Good Co-working, Gifted Mind Foundation, Duke's Hair Studio, and more Parallax Define Inc. We'd like to take a moment and thank everyone in our listening audience for listening today. We'd also like to remind everyone that we are a nonprofit organization operating entirely off the generous support of our donors. If you would like to give to our organization, we appreciate you. You can send your donation via Cash App, $, The Help Show, or on our website at www.thehelpshow.org. There's no donation too small. Every dollar given will strengthen our efforts. If you'd like to donate $1,500 or more and become a VIP sponsor, then we have some additional packages listed on our website. And you can visit us at www.thehelpshow.org for more details.